So I took my time with this video. Been a while since I posted, but I promised you that I wouldn't post anything unless I felt like it was right. I will never rush anything. I don't want to release something that isn't accurate or correct. I only want the truth. And to be honest, I think I overcomplicated things for myself. And now that it just kind of clicked and I simplified it. Jesus gives us two commands for love, and they're the greatest commands. He says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And second, love your neighbor as you do yourself. All the laws and prophets depend on these two. Your heart, soul, and mind is everything that you are. It's the image that God created us in. In Genesis, it says, "Let us create man in our image." The heart, soul, and mind is like the Trinity. And then loving your neighbor. Well, who is your neighbor? And I think it's everyone around you. I think it's the person in front of you, the person behind you, and to each side. All around. You pick a direction, if there's a person there, that's the person you need to love. And Paul tells us how to love. In 1 Corinthians 13, it starts off with a warning, and then a filter, and then affirmation. And I'm going to jump a little bit through the Bible, but in the beginning he says, "If I speak human or angelic tongues, but I do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal." The words you say, if there's no love behind them, then they're worthless. He says, "If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have all faith so that I can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing." He's saying everything you believe, if there's no love at your core, then you are nothing. "And if I give away all my possessions and give over my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing." All the actions that you do, if there's no love at their core, they're worthless. He's saying if there's no love with what you say, do, or believe, everything is worthless. And that's affirmed in Revelations. When Jesus talks to the seven churches, there's multiple times where he says that you need to love where it's worthless. So what is the filter of love? Everything that you do, say, and believe, how is it love? What makes it love? Well, Paul tells us again. He says, "Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not irritable, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things." That's the filter. If everything you say can pass through what Paul's telling us here, then it is love. If everything you do passes through this, if you can check each one of those boxes to everything you do, then you're loving in those actions. And everything that you believe, if it can follow each one of these, then your beliefs have love at their core. So every word that comes out of your mouth, if it doesn't follow this, if it's rude, if it's irritable, if it's impatient, then it's not love. Everything you do, if it follows through that, then you can't go wrong. And here's the affirmation that Paul gives. So he warns us, telling us that if we don't love, then we're nothing. Well, we have no worth, or it doesn't mean anything. Then he tells us what love is and how to exhibit love to others. And then he gives us some affirmation. He says, "Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, as I am fully known. Now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And Paul nails it right there. He says the greatest of these is love, and Jesus tells us the two greatest commands, the most important. Both of them are love, loving God and loving everyone else. The affirmation in all of that, it's almost a tongue twister, the way that he writes it. But the affirmation is, everything will come to an end, except for love. And that goes in deeper than you think. So the words that you say, if they are loving, they will resonate in somebody's mind. The actions that you do, if they are loving, they will have an impact on someone's life. And it's your belief, if there is love in your core, it will last in eternity. This is the affirmation he's giving us, that if you do love, all of your actions, words, and beliefs won't end. That's pretty good. Paul really nails it with the 1 Corinthians 13 when it comes to love. In Revelations, Jesus talks about the farther we are away from him, the less useful we are to him. And here's where I'm going to link some things together. And Jesus tells us that we are poor, blind, pitiable, and naked when we're useless. And he asks for us to buy all these things. But he tells us, don't be far away, be close. Get close to him. Accept him, be around him. In 1 John, John tells us, the one who loves knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, because God is love. So the closer you are to Jesus, the closer you are to God, the more love that you're going to be able to give to others. Because you're closer to the source. The source is God for love. If you're standing right at the well, you can continue to pull up buckets of water. But if you live 50 miles away, you have to make a trek to get to that water. We love because God first loves us. Love comes from God. I can't recall where that is said, and I apologize for that. But that is also a verse. He is the well that will never run dry. You have to be close to him to love. And as a church, our job is to continually grow closer to God, so that we can pour out that love that he continually overfills us with, pouring out into others. Now we know what it looks like. It's patient, it's kind, doesn't envy, it isn't boastful, and so on. Tattoo it on your arm, put it on the back of your phone if you have one of those clear cases, so that everything you do, your actions, your thoughts, your words, that they can be put through that filter of what love is. Because that's the best way to love. The more you filter your actions, thoughts, and words, the more natural it will become. The hardest part about love is admonishing. In Colossians, it tells us that we have to admonish those that we love. We love everybody. So how do we admonish within the church? The answer sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing that anyone can do, because it doesn't have anything to do with who you are admonishing. And Jesus gives the perfect example of it, and I'll get to that. Say someone lied to you, and you go to them. I'm going to give you two examples, and you can go to them and say, hey, you lied to me. Or you can go to them and say, hey, I am sorry that I was not approachable, and that you were tempted to sin because I wasn't as approachable as you needed me to be. What can I do so that you're not tempted to sin and lie to me again? It's heavy, because admonishing the Christian way is backwards from what the world says. The world says admonishing is telling someone they're wrong and asking them to fix it. But the Christian way is saying, I understand that you sinned. What can I do to help? Whether they did it to you or they did it to someone else. Say they lied to someone else. And you go up to them and you say, I understand it's hard to say the truth. I get it. I've lied too. Is there something I can do so that it's easier for you to tell the truth in the future? Maybe practicing with me, telling me the truth, someone that isn't involved in the situation, so that it is easier to utter those words to those that it matters to. That's admonishing. It's not pointing out their fault. It's lifting them up. It's caring about them. It's remaining humble and making their needs more important than our own. And Jesus does this, and he gives us an example of it. It's the woman at the well. He walks up to this, and I don't know if you're familiar with the story. Please read it. So I'm going to do a lot of just very brief run over it. All these people were ready to stone this woman for adultery. And they tell Jesus, she committed adultery. Here, cast a stone. And Jesus tells them, the one who is without sin can cast the first stone. And then he sat and he drew on the ground. And remember, the first thing that Paul says about love is patience. Jesus wasn't just loving the people that wanted to throw the stones. He was also loving the woman. And he had patience for the both of them. And he just sat there and drew in the ground. When he was done, he stood up. And everyone had left afterwards. And he told the woman, go and sin no more. That's almost the perfect example of what admonishing looks like. Someone who committed adultery, one of arguably what people believe is one of the worst sins you can commit. Hi, I'm Austin. I'm guilty. And Jesus tells her, go and do it no more. Repent is what that means. And on the flip side, he tells all the other people, have you also sinned? Don't condemn her for her sins. because you have your own. I learned this in a class. And the best thing that you can do as a Christian is to draw a circle around yourself. And everything that's inside that circle is what you need to worry about. Even when you help others, how can you use what's inside your circle to be inviting to others? Wearing your sin on your sleeves so that others can see it and hopefully reach out to you and figure out how you overcame it. How did you find repentance? How are you able to do that? Some of the questions that people might come to you with when you wear your sin on your sleeves, and to love them, you become vulnerable. And you tell them. So as a church, to love, we first need to love God with everything that we are. Secondly, we need to love everybody else. And how we do that is in 1 Corinthians 13. The filter that we put on, that everything that we say, do, and believe has to fall through. And if anything isn't checked, if you're not patient, if you're envious, if you're boasting, if you're irritable, then it's not loving. And you need to make it so that it is. What changes can you make? And when you're admonishing somebody for something that they're doing, they're sinning, they're doing something wrong, how do you confront them with it? Start with yourself. Invite them into the conversation and help them make their way out of it. I mean it when I say, I may not even know your name, but if you're watching the video, I love you.